Hello, and welcome to that time again where we talk about what Tinto Talks is talking about. And this time, of course, we're talking about Dev Diary number 9, where we learned about the building system and the good system, and I got very excited. So, look, I'm not going to lie, it's probably going to happen again. There's some pretty juicy tidbits coming up. So, let's start with something slightly negative, though. We had this thread here on the topic of custom nations, and basically asking, are we going to get custom nations? Back in 2015, they were the most popular tag to play as in EU4. Not sure if that still holds true 9 years later, but it was true back then. Unfortunately, it's not something that is currently planned, so either it's not going to be out on release, maybe he's going to change his mind, but there wasn't really that much of a push that I saw in this thread to try and change the mind. And it is a relatively big feature, so yeah, I don't see this one changing. No custom nations. It is what it is. Moving on, though. Peacetime action. We have something to do during peacetime. Of course, EU4 has peacetime action. It's just not especially good. Developing is not exactly my idea of a good time. But here we're going to have building buildings, which of course you could do that in EU4 as well. Expanding RGOs, handling trade, dealing with estates and parliaments. It creates nice peacetime game mechanics. We'll have to wait and see on how much of that is going to be taking your attention during peacetime. Whether you're going to have to constantly be fiddling with something like people pretend Victoria 3 is, or whether there is actually something there that, you need to work on. But anyway, we already know that handling the production methods will be something that we can automate. So I guess that's going to help a little bit, but maybe sometimes you want to go in and fiddle with things. But anyway, we also have this. It seems that Johan is intending to, every Saturday, give us a new building, which is something I'm entirely in favour of. But this one does raise a couple of questions, right? Of course, we're seeing here the tannery. It has 200 burgers as employed pops. And what we're seeing here is 1.9 goods. The number is really somewhat of an abstraction, but 1.9, so one livestock. I think this is probably sand, and then this is metalworking. Will create one single leather. Whether this is going to be, when this is upgraded, which is what this apple symbol means. When this is upgraded, maybe the input will go lower and the output will go higher relative to one another. That is something I could potentially see happening. But it remains to be seen. But I do like the idea that, livestock, and we've got game as well as separate goods. I think sand is the most likely explanation for what this icon is. Because then you can also use sand in the method of glass making, which I think makes a lot of sense as well. So, with that said, we'll move on and look here. He wants to post a unique building regularly. I want to see that. Yeah, I want to see that every Saturday. It seems like he posted this, and then the next day he was like, you know what? That seems like a good idea. But of course, we're talking here about unique buildings, so not just tanneries, which basically everyone can build, but unique buildings, like perhaps a polder. And there was also a thread basically asking what kind of unique buildings you want to see, and I think I've got it in here somewhere, but polder for the Dutch was one of the ones that was in fact confirmed. Here is a very interesting little clapback. This has Virgaus being a little bit of a tit and saying these numbers are practically ripped from a free-to-play mobile phone game that wants you to buy gold coins with real money to get more RG. It's not a functioning economy. Johan clearly took a little bit of exception to this. It's based on the same design he made for a game back in 2003 called Victoria, based on earlier game prototypes they did a decade earlier. Not sure how old you are. I mean, one can guess, one can make your own judgment on that, but I don't remember that many mobile games around in 2002. My man's throwing shade on Snake here. Can I call that out? Can I call that out? Snake, absolute goated game. Abstracted numbers for goods makes for far easier balance, as writing every 2 burgers needs 5 cows and 35 grams of salt, and needs to replace their tools on average every 97 days to produce 3 meters squared of leather a day, except for Saturdays where they leave earlier and only do 80% of work. Yeah, I don't want to do... I don't think that sounds fun. This sounds like even deeper than Anno. This is Anno squared, or Anno cubed. Like, it's a little bit too deep. But yeah, that was a pretty nice clapback. But also, not even just posting this for the clapback, which is quite nice, but also, the economy is based on Victoria. Can I? You saw the thumbnail of this video. Like, you know my opinion on this. It is not unheard of to say that this is the spiritual successor to the Victoria games that Vicky 3 just failed miserably to be. I'm just gonna say, if we want a decent Victoria game, maybe someone could make a mod for Victoria era in EU5. That would be delightful. And in fact, I think in the previous video I made, a couple of people already did say that they were going to be making that, including, I think, the developer of the Divergences mod for Vic 3. So that's cool. We'll hope to see that. Moving on, though. Asking about what the amount of people in that previous building was. Yes, it's 200 burgers. A question to Johan is whether the peasant populations will naturally bounce back and return to normal relatively quickly because of freed up farmlands, agricultural surplus, tendency for healthy adults to survive, etc. And this is obviously talking about, like, the Black Death, which happens very early on into your game, and there are in fact some things to facilitate that, which is nice to hear. So maybe the start of our games is going to be incredibly cope and difficult, but we're going to bounce back. It's going to be fine. Have we tried running a big empire? I say we. I mean, has Johan tried running a big empire? Like Ottomans and Russia, where you need to automate all your PMs, production methods. Some people are worried that paradox automation is always bad and will screw your economy. Can you give us some light based on your experience? Since we can't see the game being played yet. So Ottomans are not that big empire at the start, and he's not really played a country later on. And the system was only coded a couple of weeks ago. So this is somewhat worrying, but hopefully we'll get a bit more of a clearer picture in a few weeks' time, when maybe he does have time to automate a whole ass country of empire scale. Are horses an RGO? This is something that I actually posited or theory crafted during my previous video. If they are produced by a building that itself requires horses to build, can you organically simulate the introduction of horses into the new world? Yeah, basically both. Horses are a good on the map, and you need, I guess, a ranch to utilize them, and that will be a way that we can have horses introduced to the new world that isn't like it's natural, right? Instead of just natives just being able to create, cavalry after a few tech levels, it's actually going to be somewhere related to your trade goods. If you don't have horses, you can't make cavalry. That's kind of the long and short of it, which is, I think, kind of neat. Are precious metals like gold and silver converted into money directly like in EU4, or are they extracted into their respective trade good first? Is silver grouped together with gold? So they're treated like trade goods, but there are some added twists. So we have yet to learn what those twists are, but they in fact exist, which is interesting to know. What does RGO stand for? RGO stands for Resource Gathering Operation. It's basically a pseudo-building for getting raw materials from a province location. It's an acronym they've used since Vicky 1. Again, a lot of mentions of the Victoria franchise is it's exactly what I want to see. Asking about what happens when a castle is besieged, since the invaders will block supplies. Now the castle will get how will the castle get access to goods which require them to function properly? The garrison might decrease, but the actual garrison will not exactly desert. It's not really going to have any impact, which may be slightly disappointing. It'd be nice to see us being able to starve out a castle, I guess, but At the same time, that's kind of what siege progress is. But it may be a good thing, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, this is me theory crafting an alternative system. Instead of having siege progress with, ticks and such, what about if castles were stockpiles? They could act as stockpiles just like the market, but only for food and weapons and such. And as a siege, lasts longer and longer, that castle burns through its supplies to the point where, they run out of food and then surrender. It's a different way of doing sieges, but I feel like it'd be kind of the same thing. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think anyway. What prevents us from abusing capital movement to cheese control? Again, people still harping on about control. Moving capital for a huge sum of gold and abandoning the capital infrastructure you've built up. Of course, we already know that capitals have unique buildings specifically for capitals. Ways control goes up 1 to 3% a year in places closer and drops to the new lower cap when it used to be high. So you move your capital to a new place, that control starts to go up slowly. But where the capital used to be, that now has lower control. Abusing capital movement, not a good idea. We also know that it's going to cost quite a bit in paper, books, gold, I think, and a couple of other resources as well. I think that was written in this thread, and I don't think I've saved it, so let me just check. It was not. Okay, never mind. But yeah, it does also, moving capital does cost goods, which is interesting. You mentioned here that production methods are about reducing the number of buildings, but in the dev diary you mentioned there are hundreds of different types of buildings. Does the hundreds mean the max permutation of production methods times building types, or purely building types alone? Purely buildings. We're going to get hundreds of buildings, just straight up buildings, with production methods on top of that. As an example, we used to have multiple granaries, but when we added the production methods, we could reduce it to 1, which helps you not to have to rebuild buildings when potatoes spread to Europe. Again, we just mentioned horses spreading from Europe to the New World. We're also going to be getting potatoes spreading to Europe. I think this is kind of insane. Potatoes spreading to Europe means, quite specifically, that we're going to have to be able to change the RGO of provinces. Maybe we have, a bunch of grain provinces in Ireland. I don't know why I'm using Ireland, probably because we're talking about potatoes. But we're going to have a bunch of grain provinces. We discover the New World, we find the potato, and then what? We force the Irish to grow potatoes instead? Is that what we're going to see there? I mean, some way to change the RGO seems to be the way. Unless it is... instead of having wheat or grain, I guess, as an RGO, it's going to be growable field land, and then the production method will change what particular kind of food that we grow. That might be the case. And then you'd have an event for potato blight. So you would want to diversify your food. Otherwise, you're going to get screwed. I don't know. I'm just theory crafting once again. And again, talking about the Dutch polders, Netherlands doesn't need to exist. Doesn't exist at the start of the game, obviously. But it's a culture check for whether you can build polders, which is interesting. I love this. It provides a much deeper simulation, hence gameplay for peacetime. Quick question though. Say a paper mill produces 1 unit of paper. As you understand, the profit of the mill is added to the location's tax, but only if the unit of paper is sold on the market to another country. If all my buildings and pops require a cumulative total of 1 unit of paper, the mill would not provide profit. So, if the price of goods used to make the paper is less than the price it gets from selling the paper at the market, to whomever your own pops, buildings, or a trader, which is a new thing that we have yet to learn about. We'll probably learn about that tomorrow. Or another country's pops in the same market or whatever, then that difference is the profit. Good to know. Will buildings belong to tech? Yes, that's kind of obvious. And then here, will the Dutch be able to build polders? Maybe I should have moved this after this one, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Does the UI allow operating on many buildings for such purposes, changing the production methods? For example, can you change all the paper-producing buildings to start using some production method, or does it have to be done one by one? Can you change the production methods of all buildings for some specific goal? Yes, you can operate on X amount of buildings at the same time by using the filters system, which is kind of amazing. Choosing how much control on both ends. So between 10 and 30 control, I want these buildings to do this production method. Market access unemployment percentage, very interesting. And then the population as well. Whoever we're playing as has the smallest population of one of their territories is 3,500, and then 134,000 for their most populous territory, which is cool. It's also kind of nice to know. I like this purely because I get to see the spread of my population. Be an interesting metric. But anyway, you know how in EU4, for example, I can just sort by buildings by their income, and they would what they would provide when built. Is it possible in Project Caesar as well? I don't want to micromanage and think much about it. I see big green number, I build. Makes sense. But yeah, you can. It's one way to use the UI. There's a few more modern UI systems that we have that accumulates any goods you may have need of and create a nice macro builder system for you to trade. That is very exciting. Basically saying that in the macro builder, you can see what goods you have a shortage of, and then what buildings will provide those, and then you can upgrade from there. That's really nice. That is very nice. Click the alert for missing goods. Perfect. I love this. More UI stuff. More user-friendly, experience-y stuff. It's basically my only problem with, Victoria 2, for example, is the lack of quality of life UI elements, the lack of macro builder and such. And, having those makes games better. So, good to know that we're getting some pretty powerful elements in EU5. Why shouldn't I use automatic production methods if it updates to the most efficient one constantly? When you want to manipulate prices or make economic warfare on someone. Okay, that's a thing. Being able to dominate the market in some way with a good to drive prices around and hurt someone else's economy. Very cool. I like that quite a bit. The ability for that is cool. Do the goods give bonuses like in EU4? No, they do not. We're not getting the that system from EU4 back. So having, let me think of one. Yeah, well, cloth minus 10 local dev cost. Yeah, it's kind of irrelevant because we're not getting dev cost, but I know what they mean. Just basically no goods giving bonuses, which is, I think, a good thing. Goods giving bonuses is a little bit more abstract and gamey than I think EU5 is aiming for. Does the profit from a building making a resource just go to the tax base of the location? Yes. Basically, all our income, or the majority of our income, is going to be from taxing people who work on things. Taxing the estates who take the tax from the population. So, yes, that's... I love that. I love that so much. I think it is fantastic. And so much more realistic than just getting abstract tax and production money out of nowhere. Beautiful. Do buildings automatically select production methods based on profitability or availability, or does it have to be microed? Yes, when built, it picks the best available. If you have automation on, it will adapt during gameplay. It'd be nice to know exactly how often it will adapt, if it's every month or days or what have you. Every year it'll change. That could be interesting to find out. If the upper class pups are all employed in buildings, do they stop trying to fund more buildings? It's like the estates building new buildings. No, they will still build buildings even if they're fully employed. Are tulips a luxury trade good? No, but it might have been if Tinto was based in the Netherlands. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Gotta be honest, I think selectable production methods veers into I really did not need or hope for this for not EU5. My immediate reaction is that it feels like an unnecessary level of detail compared to where I expect the focus to be. Doesn't mean it can't work though, just hope micromanaging this, blah blah blah. The main reason for introducing it is to reduce the amount of buildings required. My man's got hundreds of buildings. Hundreds with an S on the end. Though I suspect build total is probably less than 200. But either way, my man's got hundreds of buildings. And still needed... Like, that's the reduced amount. That's already the reduced amount. How many buildings would there be without production methods? It's kind of insane to think about. Will there be a fix for the issue in EU4 where the AI would go through player-built fortresses? Basically, zone of control nonsense in EU4 is kind of annoying. It's somewhat understandable, but it's also kind of cringy and awful. And sometimes it does cheat. I stand on this hill and I will die there. The AI cannot cheat zone of control in Project Caesar, and the rules are less arcane than EU4, so it'll be less confusing. Good to know. And here he was talking about... actually, let me go to a different one first. Where is it? Here. Basically, the rules are more similar to Imperator with forts, which was 2.0 of the fort system. And of course, in the Napoleonic Age, you can freely ignore zone of control if you've got the tech for it. I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I like this at all. I'm not going to lie. I feel like ignoring zone of control is not something I want the ability to do at any stage of the game. Maybe I could be proved wrong here, but I just don't see that being a positive. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, the AI can't cheat. We saw that. And basic people saying what I've just said. It's about making the game less tedious and frustrating. If there's no zone of control, you and the AI would build far more forts. That's actually talking... Yeah, basically, this here is Johan explaining why zone of control exists still, because people still kind of don't like it. I do like it, though. I think it is fantastic. I think the ability to just ignore zone of control is a negative thing. And it does create a possibility for defense, and he spelled defense right, which is nice. But the fact that we're getting rid of it afterwards, later on in the game, I don't know about that one. That one seems a bit awkward for me. If the market cannot supply the resources, then it will not work. This is talking about forts. Is this percentage-based modifier for production buildings? Oh, sorry, not based on forts. It's based on just all buildings. If you only have 90% of the wood needed for a paper mill to function, will it be 90% efficient? So it impacts, and how does it work for forts as well? For forts, it impacts garrison levels and other scalable value, but fort level doesn't scale up and down. Okay, good to know. Some claim you can build stockades of wood, but truly only in stone, which is one of the little addendum images at the top of the dev diary. And my man was asking, basically, are there going to be wooden castles? Because there were in the medieval period. And yes, there will be. Stockade buildings are in the game. Estate builds something I don't want, I close or destroy it. They build it again, I close it, etc. So you can't close estate buildings, and destroying them makes them upset. But if that doesn't really answer the question, if you destroy their estate building, will they just immediately rebuild it? That is a question that I think I might want to get the answer to that one. How long before the estates decide that they want to rebuild that building that I just destroyed? Because if it's just cat and mouse and I'm just making them pissed off again and again, I feel like that's probably negative. Are the buildings built in locations with no owner tied to the new colonization system? Yes. Are the buildings built in other countries? Treaty ports? Yes. We're getting goddamn treaty ports in EU5. This is Victoria. This is fucking Victoria 2.5. I swear. Like, it definitely seems very strongly to me that this is the definitive grand strategy game. That this is, like the thumbnail said, this game that came out failed to, function. And so Johan's going ahead and just doing it himself. I can't imagine how the Victoria 3 devs feel seeing these Tinto talks and seeing... I imagine they can see the progress of the game as well, but who knows? I cannot imagine how it feels to be Martin right now. I really can't. I don't know. It just feels like Johan does not care about the toes of Victoria fans. He's going to step all over them. Who cares? I take it that certain buildings and production methods will be locked behind technology. Yes. Will coal be available throughout the game or unlocked later like in EU4? Coal exists from the very start, but has far less uses early. Fantastic. I'm curious to know what uses it have. Obviously, heating for homes, but is there anything else that we're going to get for them? Because I know charcoal was a huge thing. Turning wood into charcoal for people was a huge thing in this period. Like if you've played Kingdom Come Deliverance, for example, there are quite a lot of charcoaliers. I actually have no idea what the proper name for them is in that game. And that game was set in like 1404. So yeah, having coal in at the start of the game, it'd be interesting to see what uses it has. How do estates guarantee inputs for their buildings? I suppose us as the crown are not in charge of that. If they don't have enough trade raw goods to keep their buildings running, do they lose their benefits too? The worst estate buildings have no input goods that they require just to stop the player from easily ignoring them. For other things, we'll talk about it next week. I guess that means they will trade for them. And maybe that means there is going to be some element of automated trade, which would be quite lovely. Do the estates also build normal buildings, i.e. not those exclusive to the estates? Yes, they do. That's fantastic. If their satisfaction is above 50%, then it's a dice roll checking versus their satisfaction if they should build something that's good building for the country or one that is just for them. Keeping estates happy and rich can help you building up your country. That's so cool. That is awesome. Like, undeniably, that is an insane level of like quality of life, really. Maybe they'll build something that you don't especially need, but like who cares at that point? They're building stuff for you. They're adding to your economy, and I don't know. I feel like that's just kind of awesome. And then finally, I just hope dealing with production methods isn't tedious. Will it be very unoptimal to automate the majority? Primarily, we use production methods to differentiate inputs, but also to improve efficiency and volume as the technology progresses. I say it's 95 to 99% good enough to have it on automatic for many people. I suspect people at this forum are more likely to want it to be done manually, though. Of course, we have no macro change. We do have macro changing production methods using filters on which buildings are affected, including filters like the one that we previously saw. I just gotta say, this looks like the spiritual successor to Victoria that Vic 3 failed to be, and I mean, there's a reason that I chose the Victoria soundtrack to play in the background. This is exciting stuff. This is exciting stuff. And next week, of course, not next week, sorry, tomorrow for you, we will be learning about how trade functions in not Victoria, in EU5. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're excited as I am for this game. Leave your comments down in the comment section below, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.